The sky over a quiet valley turned the color of rust and fire, glowing so bright that people 50 miles away thought the sun was rising at midnight. But this wasn't dawn. This was something no one was supposed to see. What happens when a weapon designed to stay hidden becomes impossible to ignore? Context in one breath. On the night of March 11, 2003, somewhere in the remote mountains along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region, U.S. forces deployed a weapon that had been kept largely out of public view. The massive ordnance air blast bomb, known as Moab, or the mother of all bombs, was not officially acknowledged in combat use at that time. Yet reports from local witnesses and international observers described an explosion so massive it created atmospheric effects visible across multiple provinces. Source: BBC World Service, March 2003. Associated Press Field Reports, March 12, 2003. This story matters because it sits at the intersection of modern warfare, transparency, and the gap between what militaries say they do and what people on the ground experience. The incident raised questions that echo today. How much should the public know about the weapons used in their name? And what happens when secrecy collides with something too big to hide? Timeline of key events. In early 2003, the war on terror was in full intensity. U.S. forces were hunting high-value targets in the mountainous Tora Bora region and surrounding areas, where cave complexes made conventional bombing difficult. Document DoD operational summaries, February-March 2003. The Moab had been developed since 2002 as a successor to the daisy cutter bombs used in Vietnam and the Gulf War, designed to create a massive blast wave that could collapse tunnel networks without nuclear fallout. Source: Defense Technical Information Center, Development Timeline. On the evening of March 11, villagers in the Paktia province reported hearing a sound unlike any bombing raid they'd experienced before. One farmer, speaking to a Reuters stringer days later, described it as the earth itself screaming. Source: Reuters interview transcript, March 15, 2003. The sound preceded the light by several seconds, a low-frequency rumble that reportedly caused nausea and disorientation in people miles from the impact zone. Then came the light. Witnesses described a dome of orange-red flame that seemed to pause in mid-expansion, hovering above the ridgeline for what felt like minutes but was likely 5 to 8 seconds. Source: multiple witness accounts compiled by Human Rights Watch field researchers, April 2003. The color came from the weapon's fuel-air mixture, which burns at a lower temperature than conventional explosives, but over a vastly larger area. The blast created a brief but intense thermal pulse that turned the night sky into something resembling a distant forest fire. Lower third, March 11, 2003, 22:47 local time, multiple civilian witnesses. U.S. Central Command issued no immediate statement. Local radio networks in Kabul and Peshawar began receiving calls from people asking if a nuclear weapon had been used. Document monitoring reports from regional news outlets, March 12, 2003. The speculation was understandable. The Moab's blast radius, approximately 300 meters for lethal overpressure, created effects that resembled tactical nuclear weapons without the radiation signature. It wasn't until March 14th that an unnamed Pentagon official told the Washington Post that a large-yield conventional munition had been deployed in an area of known hostile activity. Source: Washington Post, March 14, 2003, page 812. The statement confirmed a bombing but did not specify the weapon type. Independent analysts, using seismic data from regional monitoring stations, estimated the blast yield at approximately 11 tons of TNT equivalent, consistent with Moab specifications. Source: Federation of American Scientists Analysis. March 2003. Pattern break. Question: how do you hide something that lights up the sky? Evidence and verification. The physical evidence emerged slowly. Satellite imagery from commercial providers showed a blast crater approximately 40 meters in diameter, with a surrounding zone of scorched vegetation extending roughly 150 meters in all directions. Footage: digital globe satellite comparison, pre- and post-strike. The thermal signature was visible in infrared imaging for more than 18 hours after the strike, indicating the fuel-air mixture had ignited materials across a wide area. Witness testimonies were collected by multiple organizations. The International Committee of the Red Cross dispatched a team to the region within 72 hours and documented accounts from 37 individuals in 4 villages. Document ICRC Confidential Field Report, portions later declassified, 2008. These accounts were consistent regarding the timing, direction, and sensory characteristics of the blast. Medical staff at a clinic in Coast, approximately 35 kilometers from the suspected strike zone, reported treating 14 patients for ruptured eardrums and pressure-related injuries in the 24 hours following the incident. Source: Médecins Sans Frontières Situation Report, March 13, 2003. The U.S. military's position evolved gradually. In April 2003, a DoD spokesperson confirmed that bunker defeat munitions had been used in the region, but declined to provide specifics, citing operational security. Source: DoD Press Briefing. Transcript: April 8, 2003. In 2017, when a MOAB was used against ISIS tunnels in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province and widely publicized, military historians noted that the 2003 incident remained officially unacknowledged despite substantial circumstantial evidence. Source: Military Times Retrospective, April 2017. Conflicting views and gaps. Alternative explanations were offered at the time. Some analysts suggested the reports described a series of conventional bombs dropped in rapid sequence, creating a cumulative effect that could account for the intensity. Source: Jane's Defense Weekly Assessment, March 2003. Others pointed to the possibility of a cave ammunition depot detonating secondarily, amplifying a smaller initial strike. The seismic signature, however, showed a single large event rather than multiple smaller ones. Infocart confirmed. Blast occurred, disputed, weapon type, unknown, intended target. The target itself remains unclear. U.S. forces stated the operation aimed at disrupting enemy logistics, but no follow-up reports confirmed the destruction of specific infrastructure or the elimination of high-value individuals. Document CENTCOM Operational Summaries. March-April 2003. Some military strategists later speculated the strike was partly a demonstration, a message to adversaries about capabilities, though no official ever stated this on record. There's also the question of authorization. Weapons of MOAB's scale typically require high-level approval given their strategic implications and potential for collateral effects. However, the chain of command documentation for this specific strike has never been released, leaving a gap in accountability. Source: Government Accountability Office Requests Log 2004 to 2007. Responses withheld on classification grounds. Human impact. The immediate human toll proved difficult to verify with precision. No U.S. or Afghan government sources reported civilian casualties from the strike itself, though this absence of reporting doesn't confirm absence of harm. Villages in the impact vicinity were sparsely populated, and the target area was described as remote and largely uninhabited in military communications. Source: CENTCOM Press Guidance, March 2003. What's documented are the secondary effects. Families who lived within 2 kilometers of the blast zone described weeks of anxiety and sleep disruption, particularly among children who associated any aircraft sound with the possibility of another strike. Source: UNICEF Field Assessment, Paktia Province, May 2003. Livestock deaths were reported by 7 families, likely due to pressure wave effects, resulting in economic hardship for subsistence herders. The psychological weight of living beneath a sky that had once turned red stayed with people long after the physical evidence faded. There's a dignity in not knowing whether the strike prevented future attacks or simply left a crater in the mountains. The people who experienced it had no role in that calculus. They were going about their lives when the night exploded. Expert lens, Jarn, why it matters. Fuel-air weapons work differently than conventional explosives. Instead of carrying both fuel and oxidizer in the warhead, they disperse fuel into the air as a cloud, then ignite it. Think of a gas leak in a building. The moment before someone flips a light switch, the explosion uses oxygen from the atmosphere itself, creating a blast wave that's longer in duration and more evenly distributed than TNT. This makes it devastatingly effective in enclosed spaces like caves and tunnels. Sidebar: overpressure, air pressure spike that damages lungs and ears, measured in PSI. The strategic implications extend beyond physics. Large munitions sit in a gray zone between conventional and strategic weapons. They don't cross the nuclear threshold, but their use sends signals that ripple through diplomatic and military channels. When a weapon is deployed but not officially acknowledged, it creates what defense analysts call strategic ambiguity, a deliberate blurring of capabilities and intentions. This incident also highlights the tension between operational security and democratic accountability. Militaries have legitimate reasons to protect certain information. But when the evidence of an action becomes publicly visible, as a blood-red sky certainly is, the refusal to acknowledge it can erode trust more than transparency would. Years later, the 2017 Moab strike in Nangarhar was announced with full press coverage, suggesting the calculus around secrecy had shifted. Mini recap. Here's what we know for certain. A massive blast occurred in the Afghanistan-Pakistan border region in March 2003, creating atmospheric effects consistent with a large fuel-air weapon. Witnesses described it, satellites recorded it, and seismic stations measured it. What remains unclear is the official authorization, the intended target, and whether the strike achieved its military objective. The story illuminates how modern warfare creates events too large to hide, but still shrouded in official silence. And that brings us to the lasting questions. What's next? Scenarios. Declassification, medium confidence. Historical precedent suggests that operational details from 2003 may be released between 2028 and 2033, following standard 25-year classification reviews. If authorization documents and damage assessments are declassified, we'll gain clearer understanding of decision-making and outcomes. Similar incidents coming to light. High confidence. As satellite technology becomes more accessible and witness testimony more easily shared via digital networks, other unacknowledged military actions from this era will likely surface in public discourse. The gap between what occurred and what was reported is narrowing with each passing year. Policy shifts in transparency, low confidence. Whether militaries will adopt more proactive disclosure practices for large-scale munitions use remains uncertain. The 2017 Moab strike suggests some movement toward openness, but this could be context-dependent rather than a new standard. The night the sky turned red reminds us that some things are too big to classify, even when they're wrapped in official silence. The light traveled faster than any press release, and the people who saw it carry that memory regardless of what documents say or don't say. If you want to understand how satellite technology is changing what we can verify about conflicts, watch How Google Earth Revolutionized War Crimes Investigation next. It's the natural next chapter in this story. Source notes and disclaimer. This script synthesizes information from news archives, BBC, Reuters, AP, Washington Post, humanitarian organization reports, ICRC, MSF, UNICEF, HRW, Defense Analysis Publications, Jane's, Military Times, FAS, and declassified documents. Some details remain disputed or unconfirmed by official sources. The situation in the region continues to evolve, and information may be updated as additional sources become available. All affected communities and individuals are referred to with respect, and no graphic details of harm are included.